And as we move towards the conclusion of today's summit, we are indeed honored to have with us Ambassador Eric Garcetti, US Ambassador to India, to deliver the closing keynote address. Ambassador Garcetti has been a dynamic force in strengthening the US-India relationship, particularly in areas like defense, trade, and people-to-people ties. His vision for the US-India partnership reflects the shared values and interests that both nations are committed to. To introduce Ambassador Garcetti, I would like to invite Mr. Ed Knight, Executive Vice President of NASDAQ, on stage. I would like to invite Mr. Ed Knight, Executive Vice President of NASDAQ, to please introduce Ambassador Garcetti. Thank you. Can I have a round of applause, please, for the Ambassador?
Well, what a great day and a terrific program. I learned a lot. I got energized. I'm going to walk out of here full of ideas because it's an ideas summit, right? And what was so great about today is we heard from business leaders, exciting ideas and the rest, but we got a great cross-section of Indian and United States government public servants and how they're being a catalyst to drive this relationship and build a relationship. So I can't think of a more appropriate way to close today than to hear from the leader of the United States government in India. And I'm very honored to say a few words about him. He has an outstanding resume. He went to Columbia University. It's a guy who went to public schools. You know, I'm impressed by that. A Rhodes Scholar. But he's devoted his life to serving the public. He's received awards as the most outstanding public servant. He is, of course, our 26th ambassador to the Republic of India. He's distinguished himself in many ways. Of course, he was the distinguished mayor of the city of Los Angeles from 2013 to 2022. I think most of you know, but I've been around government for a while, and other than being President of the United States, the most difficult job in the United States in public service is running a big city. It's 24/7, and they bring you all your problems. And it's not just attending a hearing. I mean, you have to get things done, particularly if you want to get reelected. And you're judged every day, and it's, what have you done for me lately? It's a very tough job, and he did an outstanding job with that. And Los Angeles, you know, we think of as an entertainment center and many things that are in celebrity news, but it is also the manufacturing center of the United States. So he came to this job with a great knowledge of the U.S. economy, of manufacturing, and drove an agenda in Los Angeles that included improving the infrastructure of the city, securing a sustainable future for the city, topics that are very related to the challenges India faces and the relationship between the United States and India. He, of course, is committed in this job, as he has stated many times, to fostering collaboration between our two countries, building the relationship in areas like trade, technology, and climate change. He is truly a steward of the relationship between the United States and India. And he is creating a platform that we can all build on going forward into the future in what is one of the most important jobs in the United States government and certainly in our foreign relations. And he is doing it with distinction and with, as always, a devotion to public service. So please join me in welcoming Ambassador Eric Garcetti.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ed, so much for the kind introduction. I'm sorry my mom wasn't here to hear it, but she's back in Los Angeles, presumably just waking up. Thank you to all of you. Namaskar and Shubh Sandhya Mitron. Good to be with all my friends this evening. And I want to thank everybody. There's the old Churchill quote that probably everything that needs to be said has been said, but it hasn't been said by everybody. So here I am. I'm all that's standing between you and an enjoyable evening. But I also love this moment to be able to come together with so many dear friends, old and new, who have come here from the United States. Thank you to our government and business and nonprofit leaders who are here to bring together this critical gathering, as well as our Indian brothers and sisters that are here. And I want to thank Sri Jitin Prasada, our union minister, for your participation and your leadership, your stewardship of this friendship. You are an example of why this bridge is so strong. So thank you to you and all the Indian dignitaries, business people, and community members who form the basis of our friendships here together. Let me also just indulge for a moment. I want to thank Alexander Slater, Alex as we know him. Where does Alex go? He's hiding right back there, who has been the India-based managing director of USIBC here. Thank you for the friendship you have shown me. Thank you for the great work you have done with this organization. And as you transition, know that you leave behind great friends. Sometimes as people transition, it's like, see ya. We can't wait to see you soon in Washington. So give him a round of applause and thank him for the great work that he has done. And where's Rahul? Where's Rahul? Is he around? There you are, right? Rahul, you are filling big shoes, but I've seen your shoe size. You're going to do great. You have been able to establish your own track record. We're so energized and excited by the leadership that you will bring as well. So congratulations for your ascension. And in front of you, the king of them all right here, Atul, thank you for the energy. You're an Energizer bunny. You are actually a small modular reactor, I'm pretty convinced. But you're my brother, ambassador, and friend. And thank you for the way you have focused our work here together with so many great business executives, government leaders, thought leaders, civil society participants. I hope all of you, through these leaders and yourselves, have gotten some great ideas here today. If you don't have a great idea coming out of this forum, you weren't listening. And if you didn't hear some incredible speakers, you were checking your phone. I mean, we have Nancy Jackson, who's over here, who kind of is India at the State Department, Lindsay Ford, Brendan, I see here, Lynch, the folks who every single day come here and form a basis for our ambitions and our dreams in this relationship. And whether it's Ambassador Rao Gupta, who embodies those leaders that come from India, become American citizens, and are living bridges between us. We have so many Indian-American CEOs now. The old joke we were just sharing in the green room was you couldn't succeed in America if you're Indian-American as a CEO. Now you can't become a CEO in America if you're not Indian-American. It seems like we have so many leaders, including a vice president who is the daughter of an Indian immigrant. We see this bridge stronger than it has ever been before. And I know that since our relations began in 1792, when we put our second consulate in the world in Kolkata, and we share a fight against British colonialism, and the British individual who was in charge in Kolkata wouldn't recognize us because he was still upset about the American Revolution. We have seen centuries of progress and work together that is not something new that we just discovered. But I stand here as ambassador, announcing that this last year was the most significant and deepest and broadest year in our two nations' history and the relationship that we've had. Every ambassador says that, and they haven't been liars. In other words, each year it really is not just growing linearly, but exponentially. The things that we're doing. When the Prime Minister came for a state visit, and veterans of state visits told me, if you have 5 or 10 things you're working on, that's a good state visit. And we were tracking 173. You get an idea of just how important and consequential, in the President's word, most consequential this relationship is. Let me run through a couple metrics. Last year, record trade, record visas, record visits, record students, record sales of military systems, record military exercises. We had record space cooperation. We have a record number of employees. This is now the second largest mission that America has in the world after our neighbor Mexico. And the list goes on and on and on. Nearly $200 billion in two-way trade. The first 6 months of this year show America as the #1 trading partner with India. And these are about what I've called, and many of you have heard me many times as I tried to sort through this breadth and give it some narrative, the 4 Ps of peace, of prosperity, of our planet and our people. Whether it's promoting peace through our military and strategic relations and the promotions of the values that we hold as two democracies, we are two nations committed to building peace here in this country, here in our own country, in this region, the Indo-Pacific, and throughout the world. Whether it's the way we're tying our manufacturing together, Apache helicopters and C-130s manufactured partially here and then used back home, or whether it's the exercises from the mountains of Alaska to the shores of the Red Sea that we're doing, we see that that peace vision is shared by both of our countries together. But peace is the predicate for prosperity. Peace isn't the end goal. We want material good for our people. We want bigger economies and fairer economies, reaching out to those who live in places where there's been fewer opportunities, finding ways that our trade and our technology interactions can grow a pie together. Whether it is the record trade that I mentioned or the ISET initiative of our critical and emerging technologies, prosperity is at the front of this relationship as well. But all of that then is threatened by those things that ignore our national borders, which is why protecting our planet has become a mission not just for us inside our own borders, but around the world. Whether it's health or the climate crisis, we know that the US and India, when together, are not an additive relationship, not one of addition, but a multiplicative relationship. Recently, I was at a company where American innovation had a breakthrough in dengue fever vaccine. 4 major strains of it, never been a vaccine that works on all 4. We took that breakthrough, brought it here because India is better than us at developing the actual manufacturing of the vaccines, and we're going to the 3rd round of clinical trials. We did the same thing with a malaria vaccine, and here the Serum Institute is manufacturing that at cost, and I was part of loading the first batch of that into trucks that were going to go then onto planes to Africa, where 1 child dies every minute of malaria. The US and India, the US times India, India times the US, is a force for good for our planet. So peace and prosperity, planet, and of course all that means nothing if we're not focused on the most important asset we have, our people. Our people are ever growing the relationship between them. Whether it was the record number of visas, 60% more visas than a year before, 75% less wait time, and I know half of you want to talk to me later about your cousin's barber's friend who needs a visa. But India became the #1 source of student visas ×2 over the next biggest country in the world last year. And we ain't looking back. We're talking about opening up 2 new consulates. You just opened up one in Seattle, and I hope the next one will be in Los Angeles. Did you hear that? The next one will be in Los Angeles. But the opportunities abound. But today I also want to sober us up a little bit too, that the risks do too, in our world, but also in our relationship. Because we're at an inflection point, and an inflection point is something more than a promise. It's a turning point. And an inflection point doesn't dictate where we go. It's not one pathway. It's up to us in this room and our networks, our governments, our businesses, our institutions, to ensure that this inflection point goes in the right direction, that our shared interests and values consciously seek to avoid any missteps, because the world is counting on us. Our people are counting on us to succeed. We live in such an unsure world right now, where unexpected wars are breaking out and are being waged in Europe, in the Middle East, in Africa, and other places. We see new technologies emerging more quickly than the human mind can absorb them, unsure of their power. We know they can do good, but sometimes they can harm us, divide us, instead of connect us and protect us. And so today it's more important than ever that these 4 guiding P's of peace, of prosperity, of our planet and our people, at this inflection point are applied first and foremost for our countries, but through the power of that connection for the world as well. We know our defense partnership does this every single day. We see that in the way that America is trusting India with some of our most exquisite technologies, matching our startups through IndusX, looking not just at defense as something that is a military impulse, but also a values one, where democracies stand for freedom of peoples, for international rule of law. But it's not also just about that foundation for prosperity. It's making sure who enjoys that prosperity. You heard today how both countries are committed to more women in the workforce, and India is making huge strides in that. How the safety of women going to work, at work, is something that both of our countries need to do more on. when we look at the way that we can learn and listen, when we don't just come to teach and preach, every single day we're sending cables back from India for Americans to learn policy innovations, insights, new technologies, and ways that India is leapfrogging ahead. And then we offer the lessons that we have, whether it was cleaning up the air in dirty cities like mine, Los Angeles, that is the challenge now I know for many American cities, or whether it's the potential of bringing American capital and Indian know-how to third countries, in the Pacific Island countries, Southeast Asia, or Africa, where we're training the human infrastructure in health and climate solutions together through things like our trilateral development partnership of the Ministry of External Affairs and our USAID. These are models for the world. I woke up this morning in Mumbai, that amazing, sprawling, beautiful world city. It's like a combination of New York meets LA. It's like if Hollywood was thrown into New York, and that sense of kind of limitless possibility, the colliding of people and cultures and ideas are there. We brought pension funds from the United States for the first time from this mission, $1.8 trillion of assets that they control, so they can better understand the opportunities and growth here, so we can bring direct investment around those things we want to see in this world, more climate and energy solutions, more infrastructure, more economic growth for all people, and so on and so forth. But we know that the challenges that we face together are not just external, they're also internal. That if we seek to, for instance, address climate change, it's not just about making sure that we have more renewable energy, but that we deal with people living in communities that don't today have any way to avoid, and excuse me for being Fahrenheit, 127-degree temperatures that we experienced in Delhi this summer, a new record. The flooding, the fires that are in my city today. Climate change is causing human beings to suffer and even to die. And so when our countries come together on super efficient air conditioners, that might not sound like something sexy. I never thought as ambassador I'd be talking to you about super efficient air conditioning. But it is in some ways the most important thing we can do for the quality of life for hundreds of millions of Indians. And imagine an India that can manufacture that, creating a supply chain that we're not dependent on that can be throttled by a third country, but one that we can then use and export around the world together. We're so pleased, too, that we're looking at this relationship not just as the top federal governments to each other, but at the subnational level. You heard from the governor of Iowa, who's here, Kim Reynolds, and as a former mayor and as a governor, the promises of national leaders are necessary. But it is the work in local communities and states that deliver the promise of our national leaders. In a federal system like India and in ours, we see the ability to find and enlist everybody in this mission to pursue a US-India relationship that is bigger than we've seen before. Whether it's in sports, seeing the inclusion of cricket in the next American Olympics in my hometown in 2028, something I was working on years before I came here, and my Indian friends said, that's probably the biggest thing you can do for us, Ambassador, so if you need to go home, you got cricket in the Olympics. Or whether it's the students, and we don't have a single month that goes by. We can't even keep track of the number of chancellors and presidents that are in the country these days because American universities, whether it's research collaborations, student exchanges, or learning from Indian universities as much as coming to them, are here on the ground. And tourism. We want to see more Indian tourists as new routes nonstop open up to the United States, as we see the average Indian tourist spends more in the United States than almost any other country. They're not just staying with their brother or their sister. They're spending money traveling, and that's a good export for us to be able to have. I urge all of you to think about your role in the coming year, 5 years, and 10 years in this relationship, to inhabit your future backwards-looking self, to remember this moment in your future selves. What did we spend the time doing that made a difference? Not the urgent thing that we had to take care of in our inbox, but that opportunity we are given by working on this relationship that few people in the world have today. Our leaders will come together in 9 days in the United States. The first time the president has welcomed in his hometown to Delaware any foreign leaders. And the Quad leaders, so together with the prime ministers of Australia and Japan, our two leaders will be face-to-face for the last time while both of them are in office leading their countries. And we've never had a prime minister as pro-America as Prime Minister Modi. He traveled as a young man to America. He bragged to me about the Delta Pass he got, and he could sleep on the plane to save money because he didn't need to be in a hotel, and he went to over a dozen states, went to the White House gate, didn't go in, and looked in, never imagining that one day he'd be honored there at a state dinner. President Biden has been focused on India for 30 years. He established the goal we all should be striving for of $500 billion of trade. And he told me when he asked me to consider this position, this was the most important country in the world to him, something no American president has ever said. But it's not just the leaders at the top. It's also the departments and agencies who have heard that message from their leaders. It's the cabinet officials and others. It's the bureaucracies that are moving this ship that direction. It's the companies, it's the investors, it's the financiers, and it's our civil society, our students, our educators that are the strength of this relationship. But I want to offer for the second half of my speech, yes, I'm about the second half, so if you need to stretch and stand up, go ahead. And I just wrote this about an hour ago. 4 other P's beyond the content, the what of our relationship is peace, prosperity, planet, and people. But I want to conclude because this is an important moment and talk about the how. What is the how of this relationship? It is not inevitable, my friends, as much as it feels that way. Of course it is strengthened by the relationships we've had for decades of Indians studying in the United States, of the United States advocating for India's independence, joining the Green Revolution, helping IITs get started up here. We can be very proud of this relationship, but nothing about the future is fated. It will depend on us. I'd like to frame in that how, if our goals are clear, and we've notched a record year of work, to reach the long-term goals, we need to consider the 4 things to make sure that our work doesn't stall, let alone retreat, or even continue at this tempo, which I would say is inadequate for the challenges and opportunities ahead. So the first P, the pace. Simply put, we have never moved faster, but we're not moving fast enough. We're not moving fast enough. Whether it's in defense collaboration, supply chain ambitions to free us from your northern neighbor and others, critical technologies that we want to define together, with the most pro-American PM, the most pro-Indian president in history, with all of them, their message has been clear: do it now. The problem is that our competition and our challenges are moving more quickly than the pace, the record pace we have today. They're concentrating resources, they're subsidizing critical supply chains, they're throttling equipment for Indian manufacturing, compounding problems. The challenges aren't just people, it's climate change and others, compounding problems like extreme weather and climate harm and more. So this moment calls for a faster pace that recognizes this is a race we must win. It's our assignment to figure out the architecture and the agenda to realize that ambition. We need to build the mechanism of speed. We need SWAT teams sitting down with the innovators, the investors, the regulators, and administrators of tomorrow to knock down barriers in both of our countries on critical technologies and supply chains. 2, we need to envision a preferential corridor that makes trade, technology, and security engagement a preference in both of our nations. We have to make sure that the exchanges and engagement is frictionless and a priority above all else for us both. That's a tough thing to say, but it is necessary because we're the only 2 countries that can do this at scale. But we have to make sure it's a priority. And we need enabling legislation to build on earlier preferential laws in security and space and trade and technology, education and immigration, to ensure that this partnership continues faster than it is today. Whether it's U.S. Senator Marco Rubio or U.S. Representative Joaquin Castro's bills that envision a preference about India, we need to be engaged in co-authoring that next chapter together through these ambitious and necessary vehicles. Pace. Second, principles. We love talking about the United States and India as the 2 largest democracies. It's an amazing sentence every time I say it. As we should. And our countries and our constitutions are similarly founded on principles. A lot of countries didn't do that, not on realpolitik or zero-sum negotiations, but founded on the equal worth of human beings and the uplifting of freedom, justice, and opportunity and institutions that are bigger than anyone's passion. Our work is too urgent to let approvals for critical defense systems that are in the US Congress or technology sharing to be held back in our system or on Capitol Hill because questions around principles arise. We shouldn't let differences between us, and no two democracies are ever the same, stop our ability to show the world what a partnership based not just on interests, but on principles looks like. There's something so powerful about that to the world. Let's not run away from those conversations, and sometimes they can be occasionally difficult, but it's actually great work for both of us, that the two largest democracies in the world run to these conversations instead of run away from them. We already do that. Last week, I was at a festival that we sponsored through USAID for Tibetans, the largest folks in exile that India has hosted so beautifully for so many decades. That's a shared value between us about freedom and self-determination. We do that on vaccines and healthcare, as I mentioned, running fair and free elections, which we saw so beautifully here. Elections don't always turn out the way we want, trust us. We've run many times, but democracies are the best system, and India's democracy is alive and well, and ours is too, even when it's difficult. So protecting and putting together our work on principles means collaboration when it comes to future guiding principles of the world, from regulating and defining how technologies can protect and connect us instead of harm and divide us, but also the future international order together, as we saw us do hand in hand, arm in arm during G20, which was the best hosting of G20 in world history. And the US played its role with its dear friend and partner India, and India played its role, and together we delivered, the world with a unanimous statement on the principles of the future. You deliver the Global South. Our partnerships and the Trilateral Development Partnership that I mentioned are taking this partnership to third countries. So proactive work together on principles has to be a part of our future work. Third P, persistence. My friends, if you think this is going to be easy, nothing great fighting for building is. Whether it's the 75 years of this country's marvelous growth in its own independence to become the world power that it is today, the proud example of democracy and freedom that India is today, or the United States, an imperfect democracy always striving to be better. This work takes persistence, let alone when it's two countries doing it together. And this may be the most important of the how P's. Our people are clear, they want us to do more. Our leaders are clear, they want us to do more. And much of the world is rooting for us, the two democracies that could be an example for them and a hope for them as well, to show a world based on principles and progress, not power and coercion. But I'm going to be blunt. We're making amazing progress, but our ambitions are not easily or automatically going to come about. They're going to have moments where our pace slows down here or there. As Lindsay Ford pointed out earlier today, we both have bureaucracies that are awesome, but also proud, big, detailed, quite Byzantine, and they're inheriting analog systems in a digital age. So we have to have persistence, to work hard without becoming exhausted, to be patient without slowing down, and to resource with real resources in our budgets the work between our two countries. Nothing is more important, and there are some great signs. As I mentioned, we're going to be opening up 2 more consulates here to do our work. You opened up a new consulate in the United States. Dozens of more positions were approved by MEA for our work here. The 60% more visas, the 75% less wait time, the agencies and departments that are creating relationships we never imagined. Take law enforcement, for instance. We're here, our law enforcement is working so beautifully with Indian law enforcement to take down call centers that are taking our seniors' life savings away in tragedies that we are now preventing. And us, in my state, in the Central Valley, taking on transnational gangs that are exporting crimes to India from our backyard. Subnational leaders like Governor Reynolds, academic leaders like the chancellors that I mentioned and presidents, financial leaders like the pension fund leaders I was with this morning, and others are coming here, but we have to plan for those resources. Today's resources are barely adequate for today, and they're not adequate for tomorrow. How do we do this? We embed ourselves in our government of things like ISET. ISET can't be an idea between two brilliant national security advisors this moment. Let's put in our bureaucracies the critical emerging technology workers for the next 20 years. Let's approve positions dedicated to the sustained negotiations that our trade representative office and others do with the Ministry of Commerce here to finally knock down the tough pieces, not the easy small ones that we call, our fights, but looking at how we plan together. Everything from EVs to photovoltaic cells, SMR nuclear power and pharmaceuticals of the future. We need fewer dialogues, I know Nancy Jackson would be for that, and more empowered high-level negotiations and implementation teams with enhanced rules to support the persistence we will need to have. And we need to get out of the way sometimes. Bring forth a generation of doers. We need to not throttle things at the State Department or MEA or across other agencies. People make the mistake of sometimes thinking their power is what you can hold on to, when true power is what you can give up, what you can share, and what you can let go. Fourth, promises. We must build our future potential by fulfilling our unfilled past promises. Whether it's the almost 20-year promise of civil nuclear liability legislation protection here in India, or whether it's India's ask of us to truly be included as a partner on critical minerals when we say you're favored, but then our laws stand in the way. This is not pointing one direction or the other, but if we make promises, we should deliver them. And we should make sure that when we deliver them, we understand that that is the foundation of deep and lasting trust. When we say we'll deliver aircraft engines on time, we have to do everything to make sure that comes through. I was with a military leader here in India yesterday, and he said, I just need one change of one rule for something that's already been approved, and then I can feel like I can defend my ships. But why is it so hard? And for every example he had, I had one too. Together, it is now on all of us to take these 4 Ps of the how, to accelerate the pace of our work, founded on and building on the principles that unite us and our people, with the persistence this hard and most consequential work demands in the shadows of the promises made and promises kept. I came here to serve as ambassador to India from the United States because I knew that the future of the world was emerging in this country and in this relationship between our two countries. Our principles can bring peace into this world at a time it so badly needs it. Our promises can lead to the prosperity of our people and others around the world. Our pace and our persistence can protect our planet and our people and show the power that the US-India magic conjures up in the world today. Our competitors will see this and realize that it has the power to break down false divisions, old tropes between North and South, and East and West. We'll show the power to model a new world where rules and institutions evolve and emerge to meet the moment, and morals are what guide us. Because we live in a time when there really are real battles between good and evil, principles and amorality, between order and chaos, between cooperation and go it your own in the international sphere. Where might makes right needs to become right makes might together. And as Secretary Blinken has said, and he could just as easily been talking about India when he talks about America, we're not for militarizing a world or obligating a world to resource depletion or debt. We don't ask our world, and especially not our friends, to be with us always or simply be against us. Our two democracies lead by our principles and are most powerful when we do, and our partnerships, to give options to all human beings to make the choice themselves to pursue and build a better world. So thank you to USIBC for bringing us together at this moment, this inflection point, to feel our power, to plan our progress, and to see that world that when we close our eyes, we dream of seeing one day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Garcetti, for your compelling remarks.